All right. I did not plug in my microphone. Here we go. There we go. All right, guys. So we're live. We're live. Perfect. Everything is actually live. We're all good. I am actually better prepared than I thought. But today we're talking about becoming the master of your dream. And, right away it sounds like a very rah kind of topic. But basically the reason that I'm bringing this one to you guys, the reason I'm going into this is I was watching a video the other day. And it was a David Goggins podcast. I can't remember the host of the show off the top of my head. But it was a David Goggins. He was the guest on the show. And for those of you who don't know who David Goggins is, look him up. He's an absolute psychopath, but his mentality and his mindset are just like really admirable, honestly, for one. Like a lot of people look at him and think he's batshit crazy, and he is, to be fair. But basically people can take a lot from his attitude and from his mindset of just going all in on a goal, actually doing everything you can to achieve a goal instead of just, kind of half-assing it and then being upset when it doesn't work out. And basically on this show, he talked about exactly that, being the master of your dream, understanding what you want and actually figuring out how to go get it and not just be the person who likes to talk about it. So that's what we're going to go into today. Now, let's get into the show here. In 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Elite Development Podcast, the number one show for athletes looking to gain an edge on their opponents and build their dream careers in sport. I'm your host, Kenny Dusseault, and today we are talking about becoming the master of your dream. Now, I know, like I said before the broadcast started, this sounds like a very rah kind of topic, and to a degree it is. But what I really want to reinforce with this, the reason that I'm bringing this one to you guys is I was watching a video from a podcast the other day with David Goggins. And if you don't know who that is, go check him out. Goggins, I believe the last name. And the man is an absolute psychopath in the best possible way. Like, this dude ran ultra marathons on broken feet. He went through Navy SEAL Hell Week 3 times, which like most people don't make it through once. He's broken the world chin-up record. Like, he's just done all kinds of absolutely crazy shit. But the coolest part about his story to me is it's not like he was just born with some crazy psychopath mentality that he's just going to go after all these records, do all these crazy, incredible things, and then just, lived his life that way. He was 297 pounds working nights spraying cockroach spray in the back of restaurants. And then one day, basically just, I won't go into like his whole story. I thought it was super cool. And if you're interested, go look him up and you can find it. One day, basically just decided it was time to change his life. He was 297 pounds. He wasn't like, there was nothing necessarily wrong with his life, but he wasn't happy with where he was at. And he decided it was time. And he just flipped a switch and became a new human being. And in his book, he goes over, the steps that he took to become the new human being. Because first off, where a lot of people go wrong, and I know in the beginning of me, transforming myself as well, where a lot of people go wrong is they think that it's that simple. They think they can just decide to be this new high-level person, and then all of a sudden they're going to be this new high-level person. But, like, guys, that shit's hard. And, like, don't get me wrong, this dude has done shit that I can only dream of. But it's like, even in that base level of experience of, becoming a better version of myself, I can tell you, it's not easy. There are a lot of days where you want to quit. There are a lot of days where you want to just make excuses. And you need to reinforce this kind of mentality into your head every day. But basically going into that little background on him, because we're going to be talking about something that he said in a video that I was watching the other day. And basically what he was talking about was how to become the master of your dream. So a lot of people, what they do is they have a dream, they have a vision, they have a goal. They want to be a UFC champion. They want to win a world championship in some other sport. They want to make $1 million competing in their sport. They want to become a professional, whatever the goal is. People have a goal and they love to talk about it. That's always the first step. They love to talk about it. They love to tell people, I'm going to be a UFC world champion one day. But what they don't love to do as much is put the work in that is required to become that. Now, basically what he talked about is the reason that people get so stuck in this point, and I loved this and resonated really hard with this, is you get a dopamine hit from talking. If you're standing around with your friends and you're talking about how you're going to be a world champion MMA fighter one day, then it's going to give you that dopamine hit. It's going to give you that feeling of like, oh shit, yeah, I'm the shit. All my friends are looking at me like I'm super fucking cool. Like that meant that's real. That's a real thing that happens in your brain. You get that dopamine hit and it makes you feel good talking about all the shit you're going to do. Now, the same thing when you go to train. You train and in your mind, you're like, oh yeah, I'm training hard. I'm going to be a UFC champ one day. I'm doing the work. I'm doing things right. You get that mentality in your mind that you're like, yeah, I'm the shit and I'm going places. But what people don't do, and this is what David Goggins was talking about on this podcast, which I thought was really cool and really resonated with, is they don't become the master of it. You really want that dream of being a UFC champion. You really want that dream of making $1 million in your sport, but you don't want it as badly as you want to stay up on Friday night till 2 o'clock in the morning playing video games with your buddies. You don't want it as badly as you want to save that extra little bit of money that you could be putting towards coaching that you need. You don't want it as badly as, going out with your buddies on Friday night, spending a little bit more than you maybe should. It's like, so that is the place where people go wrong. They have the dream and they talk about the dream and they get that dopamine hit from talking about the dream. They get that feeling in their mind like they're fucking somebody because they're talking about the dream. They're talking about how cool the dream's going to be when they get there and all that. They go to train and then they get that dopamine hit from training. Yeah, I'm putting in the work. I'm going to be that guy. I'm doing all the right things. But then when they're faced with a tough decision, invest in a coach that's going to help you with your future. Stay on track with your nutrition plan instead of going off track and, straying away when you're in your off season. They get faced with these difficult decisions. Go out on Friday night till 2 a.m. and have some fun, or go to bed at 9:30 and be ready to train the next day. They get faced with these tough decisions and they find ways to justify making the easier choice. They decide to go out that one night. Oh, one weekend doesn't mean that much. They decide to, spend that money on, the cool shoes or whatever the fuck else they're buying instead of putting that money into their future. They decide so many times to make the decision that's going to pull them further from the goals they say are so important to them, instead of putting that same energy and that same enthusiasm, that same mentality towards succeeding in their future. So why do you do this? Why do you do this when you say your goal is important to you? You say that you're willing to do whatever it takes to get there, but then an opportunity presents itself to push yourself further towards that goal and you don't do it. Why? Because that dopamine hit tricks you. You get that dopamine hit from, talking about what a big deal you're going to be. And so in your mind, you're already progressing that way. So you don't need to go extra. You don't need to, invest that money, invest that extra time, do that extra work, because you're already the shit. You're already on your way there. And this is where the main point of that podcast came out, of becoming a master of your dream. Becoming a master of your dream is understanding every single element that could possibly go into it and going all the way fucking in. Now, when I talk about every single element, what he was talking about on that podcast, I almost said that'll be a fucking fun day when I have David Goggins on my show, which I'm not saying it's not going to happen. So what he was talking about on that podcast was he was talking about finding every element of what it takes to be successful. And whether that, again, is success in sport, whether that is success in business, whatever it is, finding every element and becoming a master of every element that it takes to be successful. So easy examples of this are finding a time that you wake up in the morning and waking up at that time and getting up at that time every single morning, no matter what. And the reason something like that is so important is because, again, every morning you build trust with yourself. I wake up at 4:30 every single morning except for Saturdays. And on every single morning when that alarm goes off, my first thought is, I'll sleep in for 5 more minutes. And then my second thought is, I don't fucking sleep in because I have big goals that I want to accomplish. And I said I was going to get up at 4:30 today. So I get up. Now, would it be the absolute end of the world if I got up at 5 instead of 4:30? Of course not. It's a half hour. It's not that big a deal, but it's keeping a promise to myself. And the reason that's so important, and the reason that's so important for you too, is that every promise you keep is a win. That's just that little check mark, that little dollar in the bank, that little piece of the puzzle saying that when I say I'm going to do something, I fucking do it. And so when you're looking at how you're spending your time, when you're looking at, the things you're doing to push yourself forward in your career, ask yourself, do you keep your promises? When you say, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m., do you wake up at 6 a.m.? When you say, I'm going to give everything I can to training today, do you give everything you can to training, or do you go hard and then when you decide, I'm kind of tired now, then you stop? When you say, I'm going to stick to this nutrition plan so I can get down to that weight I need to be at so that I can make my weight cut easier on myself, do you do it? Or do you stick to it for a couple of weeks and then justify the reasons why you got off of it? And this is the difference between working hard and becoming a master. And guys, this is by no stretch me saying that, I'm a perfect master of this in any way, shape, or form. This is something I'm working on myself too. But listening to those guys, listening to those personal development podcasts, especially guys like David Goggins, it just reinforces those things with me. And that's why I wanted to bring this one to you guys too. And one of the stories from my own life that really resonated with me when I was listening to this podcast too, when it comes to truly deciding to be successful in something, truly deciding that you're not going to settle for anything other than what you want, was right when I moved to Calgary. I moved to Calgary to a job at a gym called the Athlete Factory that's not around anymore. And the way that gym worked is essentially they paid nothing, and you started in a 200-hour internship. So I was living across the country. I was paying rent. I was paying for groceries, all of that, and I was making zero money. And after my first day at the gym, I realized if I want to succeed in this industry, I need to stay here. They were higher level coaching than I had ever seen in my life. There were actually strength and conditioning coaches making a good living purely from coaching athletes, something that to that point I hadn't seen before. And I realized if I'm going to be successful in this industry, I need to stay here and I need to learn what it is they do so that I can make it and I can actually make a living in this industry. And so I had tightened up my spending. I got myself down to spending $37 a week on food. And I might not be a gigantic human, but I'm over 200 pounds, and figuring out how to budget $37 a week for groceries was not an easy thing to do. I ate basically ground chicken, tuna, rice, and lentils for about 6 months straight. I lived in the absolute worst apartment. It was a hole in the ground. One of my walls of my apartment was a curtain separating me from the owner upstairs' basement, and the people upstairs were hoarders. So right across that curtain was literally a pile floor to ceiling of trash. But it was $500 a month. It was all included, and it was a 7-minute drive from the gym. So I knew if I was living here, I'd be able to get to the gym fast. I'd be able to save on gas. And I'd be able to spend more time pushing towards the dreams that I had and not be spending as much money because the place was an absolute piece of shit. So if they tried to charge me more, it wouldn't have been worth it. So the reason I lived that way for 6 to 8 months was because I needed that time to build up enough money to actually be able to survive at that gym. And I knew that in order to achieve the goal I had for my career, I needed to stay there. Now, a lot of people would have said, get a second job so that you can, pay the bills, or move into somewhere that isn't a fucking curtain away from a hoarder's basement, move into somewhere that had a full kitchen. Or a lot of people wouldn't be willing to make those kind of sacrifices. But those people, all that says is that the goals they say they have aren't as important as they say they are. Now, does that mean that everybody needs to live in the absolute worst of worst places and budget nothing for groceries? No, of course not. If you have the means to do more than that for yourself, then do it. But also, if you're sitting here and you know that investing in a coach could help you move forward in your career. You know that you need a nutritionist to help you, lose some weight and get on track to be able to compete. You know that the gym you're at right now isn't really the right gym for you, and you really want to upgrade and move to this other gym, but it's more expensive or it's further away or whatever. And you're living in a super nice apartment, driving a super nice car, wearing all the top of the line shit, whatever else it might be, then your goal isn't that fucking important to you. Either that, or you need to reframe your priorities, because you could live somewhere that's not quite as nice and put that money towards your future. You could drive something that isn't quite as nice and put that money towards your future. You could make those little cuts and make those little sacrifices in the areas that you don't think about in order to be able to put more towards your future. And I can tell you, being where I'm at now, that it pays off. Because I didn't get a second job, I was able to spend literally every single day at the gym. And because I was able to spend literally every single day at the gym, I started getting clients faster. I was starting to build myself up faster, which means that in a shorter amount of time than a lot of the other coaches that started at that gym, I was able to actually build up my clientele and be full-time. But if I'd been working another job 3 days a week and I wasn't around to help the other people, I wasn't around to learn more or anything like that, then those clients that I started getting are going to other people. And if those are going to other people, I'm not building into the person that I knew I needed to be as fast. Maybe I don't make it through the time at that gym. You never know, right? But because I was willing to cut back in other places, I was able to put that energy, put that time, put that effort into the dream itself and nothing else. And that's what so many of you guys are missing, is the difference between working hard and actually becoming a master of the dream you're trying to achieve. And so I'd highly encourage you from this one to go check out David Goggins. Go check out that podcast specifically. If you search David Goggins, Master of Your Dreams, you should be able to find it on YouTube. But more than that, guys, the big thing I want you to take away from this is look at your own life. Look at your own career. Look at where you're at right now and look at where you want to be. As an example, I want a team of 10 coaches working for me. I want to have a gym that's about 10 times the size of the one I have right now. I want a lot more things in my career, things that I'm not even close to yet. So I understand that even though I'm out of the woods of like, how am I going to fucking survive month to month, I'm nowhere near where I want to be. So every single day, my focus is taking steps closer to that, taking steps further towards that. It's not always easy. There's always reasons not to do it. But every time you tell yourself, oh, now is just not the right time to start that, understand what you're actually telling yourself is that goal that I have is not that important. I can push that off for longer because that's not that big of a deal if I achieve that yet. Or, it's not a big priority for me to get to this place because I'd rather have this, this, and this in my life. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's you and that's where you're at, that's fine. But if you actually want to be able to look back in your career in 10, 15, 20 years and say you gave it everything you had and you either made it or you didn't purely based off your merit, take a minute today, analyze where you're at, analyze where you want to be, and ask yourself, are you mastering every single element of the person you are trying to become? And if you're not, what is one thing you can do today? What is one thing you can shift today that's going to help you get there? So that's it. That's all. I appreciate you all for tuning in, especially those who are here all the way till the end. As always, subscribe to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We grow through word of mouth. So, share the show with a friend, share the show with a teammate, share the show with somebody who's going to benefit from this message. So that's it for me. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you all on the next episode.